Hello class. Today we will analyze The Censors by Luisa Valenzuela. In order to have a full understanding of this short story, it is essential that we learn about the author as well as her historic background. The author Luisa Valenzuela was born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina. At 19, she published her first short story named Ciudad Ajena in English. She began her career as a journalist and later proceeded as a narrator, and is now known as one of the most prestigious authors of her time. During the Guerra Sucia, Valenzuela exiled from Argentina to Mexico, Spain, and the United States. During her stay in the United States between 1978 and 1984, she lived in New York and taught literature in Columbia University and New York University. She self-exiled from Argentina because if she would have stayed, she would have had to abide by the rules of the government, as well as not being able to fully express herself as an author. To give some historic context, which begins after the death of the controversial President Juan Perón in 1974. His wife and Vice President Isabel Perón assumed power later on. However, her position as president did not last long because she was not well prepared for all the workload to come. Because she was not a very strong political leader, military forces removed her from office. This military alliance maintained a grip on the nation's power by cracking down on anybody whom they believed was challenging their authority. After Isabel Perón was overthrown as president, General Rafael Videla became the following president of Argentina. Following, we have what was known as La Guerra Sucia, the Dirty War. The Dirty War, also known as the process of national reorganization, was a time in which Argentine military committed state terrorism in Argentina from roughly 1974 to 1983. Military and security forces hunted down and killed left-wing guerrillas, political protesters, and anyone believed to be associated with socialism. Before moving on, it is essential to know that the government's excuse to all of this injustice was that this was all a national reorganization process to bring back order into the country. One of the biggest controversies of this time was all the people that were disappeared. Many people, both opponents of the government as well as innocent people, were disappeared in the middle of the night. These people were taken to secret government detention centers, where they were tortured and eventually killed. These people are known as los desaparecidos, or the disappeared ones, which reminds us of all the tragic events that happened during this time. The disappeared ones, los desaparecidos, were all the people who showed any type of resistance against the government. These people were kidnapped, tortured, and murdered. They were called the disappeared because they were never found until this day. No one knows what happened to their family members or where their remains lie. In total, there were more than 30,000 people who disappeared and thousands that were exiled. One thing that came out of this tragedy was the government's biggest group of protesters, which were known as Las Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo, the grandmothers of May Plaza. Las Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo were the mothers and grandmothers of those who were victims of the dictatorship. These grandmothers have fought to know what happened to their families till this day. They protested outside of courts, the successive military governments, the Supreme Courts, and other places of power. They knew that their sons and daughters were most likely dead. However, they knew their grandchildren who were abducted along with their parents or born while their mothers were held in captivity could still be alive, and they wanted answers. On this slide, I have attached a link in which you can hear the stories of these women on your own free time. Each one has a different story to tell, and it will give you a better understanding and a better idea of what went on during this time in Argentina. Following, we have niños apropiados, the stolen children. Many times an entire family was kidnapped. The parents would be tortured and killed, while the kids that were underage were taken into adoption or given to wealthy families that supported the government. They are called the stolen children, niños apropiados, because they were taken from their families. They say that if you were born between the years 1976 and 1983 in Argentina, and if you doubt who you think you are, and you want to look for answers because you should look for answers because you may be a stolen child. In this slide, I have also attached a link that will show you videos of many who were born between these years and have found their true identities with the help of the Abuelas de Plaza de Mayo organization. We have established an understanding of the historic background that comes into play with this short story. We may proceed to analyze the censors. As we know, the censors is about Juan, the main character who receives a letter from Mariana, who we know and who we assume is his significant other since it never specifies. Now, the issue in this text is that Juan replies to the letter without realizing that the context within it could get him and Mariana killed. The government is so strict that every little detail of a letter is censored, and if in any way it seems to go against the views of the government, they will be punished for it with their lives. Therefore, Juan's main purpose all throughout the story is to get a hold of the letter that he wrote before it was censored, to throw it away and save his life as well as Mariana's life. One of the most important clues Valenzuela gives her audience on this story is the foreshadowing since the very beginning. The first sentence as the following says, Por Juan. One day they caught him with his guard down before he could even realize what he had taken to be a stroke of luck was really one of fate's dirty tricks. These things happen the minute you're careless, as one often is. With that being said, Valenzuela is letting us know that Juan's fate is fatal and that his actions have gotten him killed. At this point, the narrator is just telling us the story. Following, we've got some very important themes that come into play throughout this short story. One of them is, to start off, we have ambiguity, which plays part with the letter that Juan wrote to Mariana. We are aware that he received a letter and that without thinking, he wrote another and sent it out to her. However, we never find out what about his letter is so life-threatening. We know that there is nothing wrong with the text in their letter. However, what about the rest of the letter that we never touch upon? So we are left with many questions on what exactly is that can get him and his loved one killed. Another thing is the time, which also plays part into Juan's transformation as an individual. He starts off as a humble guy who is only trying to save his girlfriend's life, but in this end, he ends up sanctioning her life as well as his own. His goal was to do whatever it took to get a promotion at work and become a censor, to then get rid of the letter he wrote. However, once he actually got to where he wanted to be, he forgot what his main purpose was since the very beginning. He got caught up into his new job, and he was beginning to feel proud of himself and like he belonged. Valenzuela writes the story as a sort of criticism towards the Argentinian country at this time. In this time, there was no such thing as freedom of speech or any type of freedom to do whatever you wanted. She is criticizing the government as well as the injustices it put the people through. Overall, one of the main themes of the story is irony. As we know, Juan wanted to be a letter censor in order to retrieve his own letter and save himself as well as his girlfriend. However, in the end, he became so good at his new job that he felt he had a duty to his own country, his job, and himself to do what was expected of him. Therefore, when Juan came across his letter, he did not think twice before putting it in the pile of those who went against the government. He basically got himself and possibly his girlfriend murdered.